Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the G Unit and welcome to episode 24 of my GBS Zero build. We're not on the car at the moment, we're looking at all the mechanicals because finally we can get this cylinder head back together. It's something we've been meaning to do and we've been trying for the last few episodes, but we've had setback after setback and we've been finding other things to do in the meantime. First of all, we stripped it all down and I lapped in all the valves and got all them perfect, and they're all still assembled in my specialist Vauxhall box. But before we could put them back together, we found that all the collets had little cracks in. So I spoke to QED and we got some new collets through. And then I had a few more things I wanted to do. I ported the inlet manifold to match the cylinder head exactly, so we've got optimum flow. And now with the inlet manifold straight up, when you put the throttle bodies on and open up the butterflies, you can actually see the inside of the combustion chamber, but you can see right down through. So we are going to be performing fantastically. So we've got everything. The other thing we had to do was grind out the inside of the head because our camshafts were so big that they were catching on the original Vauxhall casting. So we've got all that done. So that's all been ground out. The inlets have all been ported and port matched, ground out. The valve seats have all been lapped in. So now we need to give this a massive clean up and we can get it back together. So you saw me absolutely going to town with the cleaning there. I wanted it all absolutely spotless. I wanted to get it all cleaned out, get all the swarf out, any grit, any old oil. And I think we've succeeded getting this absolutely spotless. I blew down all the oil galleries, all the oil ways, right down into where the hydraulic lifters sit. I've got these little paint gun brushes that I put down all the little holes. And when I was grinding out the inlet manifold to suit the head, and you can see where I was grinding out for the cams to miss, you can see how much I had to grind out of the casting for these massive SBD cams to clear the casting. Even though I masked everything up and I tried to keep it as clean as possible, when I was blowing it all out, there was still all this swarf left in the head bolt holes, which all blew out. So I'm really glad I went to town making sure everything was spotless, because this is not what you want circulating around your engine. So I used the paint gun brushes to go down all the head holes, all the way down, making sure everything is absolutely spotless. I might even need to start wearing a hairnet now. Well, maybe a beard net. But now we're all clean, we can start assembling. So first things first, I'm going to tape up the underside of the head because this has been skimmed, so it's been machined perfectly flat. And when we're putting the tool in, it only takes one little slip or one little dink and we put a gouge in this, even just scraping it across accidentally. So I'm going to tape this surface all up so we don't have to worry about it. And there's that, nice and safe, so we're not going to catch that when we're putting the valves in. Just means we can concentrate more on the other side where we need to. The other thing I did before I cleaned all the head up was just went over all the faces on the top here where the rocker cover gasket sits with some wet and dry and a flat edge, and I just went over them all just to check there was no nicks or any gouges out of them, because the last thing I want is for there to be a leak from the top end, because that will just make a great big mess. So I think I'll just tape these up, because when this goes down it might just nick the edge, and that's all it takes to make the gasket not sit on there properly. So I might as well tape them up while we're here. And that just means we can concentrate on the job at hand, getting the valves in and getting the collets on. So what we're going to need out of our L-ring top end gasket set at the minute, all we're going to need is the valve stem seals. So that's just an oil seal. The valve goes through them and that keeps the oil from all inside the head from going into the combustion chamber. So they are the first things to go in. That's the lower valve spring seats all in there. Got them all in there. Now it's time for the seals to go in, and I've just got a 11mm socket that fits perfectly over there, so we can just tap them in without damaging the seal in the middle. So let's put them on top of the valve guides. First one, start at number 1. Now because the hole's so deep down there you can't really get your fingers in, so what I tend to do is just put them on a screwdriver, drop them in, then get our socket, push it on. That's all it needs. 15 more to go. And that's all the valve stem seals in. So they are just push fit. And I just gave them one little tap just to make sure they're seated home. But they are all in. So now the valves can go in. In the bag of valve stem seals, there was also these little orange straws, which I wasn't sure what they were. But I've just Googled it. And what they're actually for is because the end of the valve is a bit rough, you put the straw on the end of the valve like that. Then this is just an old seal. But then when you push it through, comes through and you take the straw back off. And that means the ribs here, if there's any sharp edges, won't rip the seal as it goes in. So I haven't used them before, but as they're here, I might as well give them a go. So we've got our new collets from QED all ready to go. So we're all lined up. We know which valve goes in which port, and they're still all in my specialist Vauxhall box. So let's make a start. Lube up the valve stem so it's nice and oiled up. And now let's try these little straws. Give them a dab of oil. So this must be if you're leaving all the valves in the head and you're just replacing the valve stem seals on the top with the valve already in, because this straw won't go through the valve guide. So we'll oil all this right up. Nice and lubed up. And slowly twist it through. And we're in. Put our Kent valve springs in. Top hat on. Then we've got our valve spring compressor that we modified before. We had to extend this bit because the 16 valve head is so deep. I had to weld this extra bit in. And we are clamped down. Now we just need to get these collets in, which is where the fun starts. So the collets need to sit in here on these little ridges. Then when we release the clamp up, they will sit in this bit here. A lot of people have talked about the collet tool that seems to be quite good, and I was planning on getting one, but I haven't got organised, so we're just going to go old school, which is going to take a lot longer. So just get a little bit of grease on a screwdriver and see if we can stick them in. One. 2. Slowly, try and slowly release. And we're on. Super on. I think you've done this before. So that's the first one all in. But what I'm a little bit concerned about is how I can see a bit of the spring sitting outside the retainer there. You can see the coil on the top, the flat bit, isn't fully locating in. And what I've just found is these are the Kent Cams 2004 springs that were in the head. And these were the retainers that came off it. But on there, you can see they can move. So I had another head, just a standard one. I've just stripped it down to compare valve sizes, or valve spring sizes. You can see the Kent Cam ones are quite a bit bigger than the standard ones. So the standard one, the recess in the bottom, so it's really snug and that can't move at all. It's really nice in there. But on the Kent Cams one, now this is how it was on the Astra, and I was running it like this on the Astra. I'm just a bit worried about this being able to move around, even though the valve should keep it all in line. As factory, they should be nice and snug like that. Not able to move like that. I think I'll put them all in. I've had a little Google, but I can't really find anything on these valve springs. Only on the double valve springs that Kent Cams do. So I'm wondering maybe, I don't know, because these are bigger, are these the outers of some double valve springs? Don't know, or should these have different caps so they locate better? I don't know, this is how I ran it on the Astra, and the previous owner ran it on his car without any problems. These are all the valves, the retainers, everything, apart from the new collets that came out of the Astra. I don't know, I think I'll put it all together as we're here and ready. And then see if I can double check with Kent Cams on Monday to see if this is okay, or whether we need different retainers, or whether these are double valve springs and we've only got the outers. Not sure. How peculiar. But it never went wrong on the Astra. It had a lot of abuse every single time. Never had the slightest issue. But I don't know. So I'll get the rest of these in and we'll go from there. So now, let's get on with the other 15. And that is all 16 valves fully installed. Now, I don't know if I'm having a bit of a lucky day or I am just getting that good, because anyone that's installed valves before know how tedious and annoying the collets are, and they always fall off and they're a real pain to do it. I thought I was going to be here for hours and hours, but as you saw, there was no YouTube magic there. Every single one went in first time. So maybe the old-fashioned methods are the best, but all are in and all are sitting nicely. All the valves are sitting up perfectly in the combustion chamber. So I think we are job done here. You saw me at the beginning take some measurements of the valve springs, just so I compare them to standard, and I'll speak to Kent Cams and see if I can find out what the situation actually is, because it's just a bit strange that they don't sit exactly to center them in the caps. So whether they do need different caps or not, I'm not quite sure. But this is how they are in the Astra. So they got all the abuse, all the revving, all the launches, all the rev limiter, and I've never had an issue. So I'll leave them like this for now, unless I find anything different or unless you know anything different. I think we are all done with the cylinder head. So that's the valves all in. I've just put some old spark plugs in to fill the hole, and I'm just going to put some methylated spirits in again. Just fill the chambers up and check that nothing's leaking through, but we should be all good to go. So I've had this sitting in here for about 20 minutes and it hasn't dropped at all. Nothing's come through the ports, there's no seepage, so we are completely airtight, which is as expected because we did lap all the valves in, so it should be perfect. But it's always a good idea to check just in case, because you never know. But we are all good. I think we can now declare the cylinder head completely finished. So I'm probably going to keep my Vauxhall box, because I've got a Z20 let head to do, as you've seen on my other project. So we'll keep that to one side, but for now, we can wrap this up until it's ready to fit. So now finally we can say the cylinder head is completely finished, and I think we are going to have a real good performer here. All the valves are lapped in and it's a complete airtight seal. It's already got the +1mm oversized exhaust valves. It's got massively ported and polished inlet and exhaust ports. And also we've got the high lift cams that were so big we had to grind some of the casting away in the cylinder head. So altogether, I think this thing is going to flow really well. We've got the throttle bodies, we've got the big bore exhaust, and this is going to scream all the way through. So if you remember, the reason we started at the top end and not the bottom end is because when all the bits were at the machine shop, I've got this early Astra GTE lightweight crank and the journals were a little bit rusty. So I had to get it machined up and I wasn't sure whether we were going to have to go down a size in bearings or not. But lucky enough, we got away with just a polish. So I ordered the mains and the big ends all from Nevlock Performance once again. So we've got everything ready to go. The block is bored out to suit the Amiga high compression pistons. We've got the steel rods as well. We've got the lightweight crank. So we've got everything, all the gaskets, all the bearings ready to go back together. And then we can join these two together and we'll have a complete, pretty much race engine. So I guess I better crack on with the kit car as well. So we've got something to actually put it in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on these valve springs just to see if they do need another retainer or not. But they were fine in the Astra. I've used it all day long. I bounced it off the limit and I never had any problems. So I think they're going to be all right. But I'd just rather make sure while we're at this stage, because I can see if we do need to, it's not too hard just to whip the valves out, change the springs or change the caps and go from there. As you saw, I'm quite a dab hand at these collets now, so it shouldn't take long at all. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Once again, we've had a lot of mechanical work going on. If this is your first time joining the channel, make sure you subscribe, because as you can see, we've got a lot going on. And in the future, we've got this rebuild going on. And we've also got a Zafira GSI, so I've got a Z20 let rebuild to do as well. So there might be more on that shortly. So make sure you subscribe so you grab all the content. But until next time, make sure you have fun.